My name's Abigail, and I'm 32. I was in my home office, decked out in my military uniform, leading a Pentagon briefing over video. My voice was steady, my focus sharp. Then my stepfather, Harold, stormed in, eyes wild, and slapped cuffs on my wrists. "You're no officer," he spat as the screen froze, my colleagues' faces gone. My heart pounded, but I stood tall, the sting of his words burning. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Tell me where you're watching from, and if this hits home, please like and subscribe. I sat on the living room couch, wrists still raw from the cuffs Harold had snapped on me. My uniform felt heavy, the starch in my collar chafing my neck. He paced in front of me, his boots scuffing the hardwood floor, his voice low and venomous. "You think you're some big-shot officer, Abigail? You're a disgrace to your father's name." I stared at the coffee table, its chipped edge a reminder of better days when Dad was alive, his laughter filling this house. My chest tightened, but I kept my face blank, refusing to let Harold see me crack. I tried to speak my voice steady, despite the knot in my throat. "Harold, I earned my rank. I've been in this uniform for 8 years, briefing generals handling intel that keeps people safe." He snorted, cutting me off. "Earned it. You're playing dress-up, girl. Your father was a real soldier. You're just riding his coattails." His words landed like a punch, and for a second I saw Dad's face, his proud smile at my commissioning ceremony, his hand on my shoulder. I blinked hard, pushing the memory down. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway, clutching a dish towel so tight her knuckles were white. Her eyes darted between us, but she didn't move, didn't speak. I wanted to scream at her to ask why she let him do this, but her silence was answer enough. She was scared, or worse, she agreed with him. The thought made my stomach twist. I glanced toward the hallway, catching a glimpse of Clara, my half-sister, hovering just out of sight. Her wide eyes met mine, and she ducked back her sneakers, squeaking on the floor. She was only 16, caught in this mess just like me. Harold kept going, his voice rising now, filling the room. "You think you're better than me because you sit in front of a computer barking orders. I work for a living, Abigail. I don't pretend to be something I'm not." He stopped pacing, towering over me, his shadow falling across my lap. I could smell the coffee on his breath, bitter and stale. My phone buzzed on the couch beside me, the screen lighting up with Major Carter's name. My supervisor. I reached for it, but Harold snatched it first, tossing it onto the recliner. "You're not calling anyone. Not until you admit you're a fraud." My pulse raced, but I forced myself to breathe to stay calm. "Harold, give me my phone. I need to check in with work. This isn't just about you and me." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that made my skin crawl. "Work? You mean that little game you play with your fancy friends? I bet they're laughing at you right now, knowing you got put in your place." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. He was wrong, but the doubt crept in anyway, a whisper asking if my colleagues had seen me as weak when the call cut out. I looked at Mom again, hoping for something, anything. Her lips parted like she might speak, but then she turned away, busying herself with a stack of dishes in the sink. The clink of plates was louder than it should have been, each one a small betrayal. Clara's shadow moved in the hallway, and I wondered what she was thinking, if she hated me for causing this scene, or hated Harold for starting it. I wanted to go to her to tell her it'd be okay, but I was stuck pinned by Harold's glare and my own fear of what came next. Harold leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You're not fooling anyone, Abigail. This family doesn't need another hero. We needed you here, not chasing some fantasy." I swallowed my throat dry. He was rewriting history, acting like I'd abandoned them when I'd spent years balancing deployments and home sending money when Mom lost her job, calling Clara every week to hear about her art. But arguing was pointless. He'd made up his mind about me long ago, maybe the day he married Mom when he first saw Dad's medals on the mantel. My phone buzzed again, insistent, and I felt a surge of panic. Major Carter wouldn't call twice unless it was urgent. I stood, my legs shaky, but my resolve firm. "Harold, I'm not doing this. Give me my phone or I'll walk out and get help." He stepped closer, blocking my path, his eyes narrowing. "You're not going anywhere. Not until I'm done with you." The air felt thick, the room too small, and I realized this wasn't just about today. This was years of his resentment, his jealousy of a man he'd never met spilling over onto me, and I was trapped in it with no way out yet. I stood there, Harold's bulk blocking my way, his breath hot and ragged. My heart hammered, but I kept my eyes locked on his, refusing to flinch. The living room was a pressure cooker, the air thick with his rage and her defiance. Clara's phone trembled in her hands, still recording her breath hitching as she stared him down. Harold's face was a storm cloud, his fists clenched, but he didn't move toward her. Not yet. My arm throbbed where he'd grabbed me, the skin already blooming with a bruise. Mom hovered in the kitchen doorway, her voice a faint whimper. "Harold, please, let's all calm down." But he ignored her, his eyes boring into me like I was the root of every wrong in his life. "You think you can turn my own kid against me?" he snarled, taking a step closer. I held my ground, my boots planted on the rug, the coffee table digging into my calf. "Clara's not against you," I said, my voice low but sharp. "She's just scared. You're scaring her." He laughed, a bitter bark that made my stomach lurch. "Scared? She's spoiled just like you. Always playing the victim, thinking you're better than this family." His words sliced deeper than I wanted to admit, each one a jab at the life I'd built, the pride I'd earned. I glanced at Clara, her eyes glistening, but fierce, her phone still raised. I wanted to tell her to run to get out before this got worse, but I couldn't break my stare with Harold. My phone buzzed again on the recliner, Major Carter's name flashing a reminder of the career hanging by a thread. Harold followed my glance, his smirk twisting. "Forget your little job, Abigail. You're not leaving this house until you learn some respect." He lunged past me, snatching my laptop from the desk in the corner, its charger cord whipping across the floor. "That's mine!" I snapped, stepping forward, but he held it above his head like a taunting bully. "Not anymore. You don't need this to play soldier." My blood boiled, a red haze creeping into my vision. That laptop held classified briefs, encrypted files I was trusted to protect. Harold didn't just want to humiliate me. He wanted to destroy everything I'd worked for. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay even. "Harold, you don't understand what you're doing. That's government property. You could get in serious trouble." He scoffed, tucking the laptop under his arm. "Trouble? I'm the one keeping this family in line. You're the one causing chaos, always flaunting your uniform like it means something." Mom finally moved, her slippers shuffling as she stepped into the room. "Harold, maybe she's right. Just give it back." Her voice was soft pleading, but it only fueled his fire. He rounded on her, his finger jabbing the air. "Don't you start, Diane. You let her run wild and now she's tearing us apart." Mom flinched, her hands twisting the dish towel, and I saw the guilt in her eyes, the weight of years spent tiptoeing around his temper. I wanted to shake her, to scream that she could stop this, but I knew she wouldn't. "Not yet." Clara's voice broke the silence, small but steady. "You're wrong, Harold. Abigail's not tearing anything apart. You are." I turned, stunned, as she lowered her phone, her cheeks flushed with anger. Harold's jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he'd lunge at her. I stepped closer to her, my hand brushing her arm, a silent signal to stay behind me. "Don't, Clara," I murmured, but she shook her head, her braids swinging. "I'm not scared of him. Not anymore." Harold's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You're both ungrateful. I've given everything to this family, and this is how you repay me. He clutched the laptop tighter, his knuckles white, and I realized he wasn't just angry. He was unraveling. Years of resentment of living in Dad's shadow were pouring out, and I was the target. My mind flashed to the garage where I'd seen Dad's old dog tag hanging on the workbench, a relic Harold had never touched. It was still there, a quiet piece of my father's strength, and I clung to that image, steadying myself. I opened my mouth to speak to de-escalate, but Harold cut me off, his voice booming. You want to play tough? Fine. Let's see how tough you are without your toys. He stormed toward the garage door, laptop in hand, and my heart sank. I knew what he was capable of, and I couldn't let him destroy my work, my life. I followed, my boots pounding the floor, Clara's footsteps echoing behind me, the tension ready to snap. The garage door slammed open, Harold's silhouette filling the frame as he stormed inside, my laptop still clutched under his arm. I followed, my pulse roaring in my ears, Clara close behind, her breath ragged. The air was thick with the smell of motor oil and dust, the single bulb overhead casting harsh shadows across the cluttered workbench. Tools were scattered everywhere, a wrench glinting in the dim light, and I felt a jolt of fear at what he might do. Mom trailed us, her voice breaking. Harold, stop this. You're going too far. But he didn't even glance back, his shoulders rigid with purpose. He set the laptop on the workbench, his hands moving fast, grabbing a hammer from a pegboard. My stomach dropped. Harold, don't. That's not just mine. It's government property. You'll regret this. He turned, his eyes wild, the hammer dangling in his grip. Regret? I regret letting you parade around like you're something special. You're nothing, Abigail. Nothing. His voice cracked raw with a hatred I hadn't fully grasped until now. It wasn't just about me. It was about Dad, about a legacy he could never touch, and I was the living reminder of his failure. I stepped forward, my boots crunching on the concrete floor, my hands shaking, but raised palms out. Just put it down. We can talk. But he wasn't listening. He raised the hammer, and I lunged, grabbing his wrist. He shoved me hard, my back slamming into the workbench, pain shooting through my spine. Clara screamed Abigail and rushed toward me, but Harold spun on her, pointing the hammer. Stay back or you're next. Her face crumpled, tears spilling, and I scrambled to my feet, my vision blurring with rage and terror. Leave her alone, I shouted, my voice hoarse, but he just laughed, cold and hollow. Mom was in the doorway now, her hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Do something, I thought, but she just stood there frozen, like she'd been carved from stone. The betrayal cut deeper than Harold's shove, a blade twisting in my chest. I'd always thought she'd choose us, choose me when it came down to it, but here she was, letting him unravel our family, letting him break me. Clara sobbed quietly, backing against a shelf, her phone slipping from her hand to the floor with a soft thud. I wanted to hold her, to promise I'd fix this, but I couldn't. Not now. Harold turned back to the laptop, his movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. He didn't swing the hammer, not yet. Instead, he opened a drawer, pulling out a pair of pliers, and started prying at the laptop's casing, the plastic cracking under his force. Each snap was a gunshot in my ears, a piece of my career splintering. Those files, those briefs were my responsibility, trusted to me by people who believed in my competence. And now, they were being torn apart by a man who saw me as a fraud. My throat burned, but I refused to cry, not in front of him. You know why I'm doing this, he said, not looking at me, his voice eerily calm. You've been a thorn in my side since I got here, acting like you're above us, like your father was some saint. He wasn't. He was just a man, and you're less than that. The words landed like blows, each one heavier than the last. I saw Dad's face again, not proud now, but tired, worn from years of service, and I wondered if Harold was right, if I'd been chasing a ghost all this time. The doubt was a poison spreading fast, and I hated myself for letting it in. Clara's voice broke through, trembling but fierce. "You're a bully, Harold. You hate her because she's strong, and you're not." He froze, the pliers still in his hand, and for a moment I thought he'd turn on her again. I stepped in front of her, my body a barrier, my heart racing. "Don't talk to her like that," I said, my voice low, every word deliberate. But he just smirked, dropping the pliers and picking up the hammer again. "Strong. You're both weak, clinging to a dead man's name." He raised the hammer high, the laptop's screen glinting under the bulb. And I knew this was it, the moment he'd erase everything I was. Mom gasped, "Harold, no," but it was too late. The garage felt like it was collapsing, the walls pressing in, and I braced myself for the crash that would shatter my world. The hammer hung in the air, Harold's arm trembling with intent, the laptop's cracked casing glinting under the garage's dim bulb. My breath caught time, slowing as I braced for the blow that would ruin me. But before he could swing a sharp buzz cut through the silence, my phone vibrating on the living room recliner, forgotten until now. Harold's eyes flicked toward the sound, his focus breaking, and I seized the moment, diving for the workbench, my fingers grazing the laptop's edge. He roared, "Abigail, don't you dare!" and grabbed my shoulder, yanking me back. My uniform tore at the seam, the rip echoing like a gunshot in my ears. I stumbled, catching myself against a shelf, paint cans rattling behind me. Clara screamed. "Stop it, Harold!" She was at the garage door now, her phone raised again, recording her face streaked with tears, but set with a fire I'd never seen. Mom stood behind her, wringing her hands, her voice a broken whisper. "Please, just stop." But Harold was beyond reason, his chest heaving, the hammer still clutched in one hand, my laptop in the other. "You want to fight me?" he bellowed, tossing the laptop onto the concrete floor, its screen shattering with a sickening crunch. My heart lurched, a wave of nausea hitting me. Those files, years of work, my reputation, all in pieces. I sank to my knees, my hands hovering over the wreckage, too stunned to move. Harold loomed over me, his voice dripping with contempt. "Look at you crawling like a dog. You're no officer. You're a joke." The words burned, but worse was the truth in his eyes. He believed it, and part of me, the part battered by doubt, wondered if he was right. I saw my reflection in the laptop's broken screen, my face pale, my uniform torn, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. Clara's sob broke my trance, and I looked up to see her shaking her phone, still filming, capturing every second of this nightmare. Harold noticed too, his face twisting. "Give me that!" he snapped, lunging for her. I scrambled to my feet, my legs unsteady, and threw myself between them, my arms outstretched. "Don't touch her!" I shouted, my voice cracking with desperation. He stopped short, his breath ragged, the hammer swinging loosely at his side. "You're both pathetic," he spat, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a crack in his armor, like he knew he'd gone too far. I turned to Clara, my voice low, urgent. "Go upstairs now." She hesitated, her eyes locked on mine, pleading. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered, and my chest ached at her bravery, her loyalty in this chaos. But before I could answer, a new sound filled the house, a low hum from my bedroom down the hall. My work tablet, still on, was broadcasting my voice, my briefing looping from the interrupted Pentagon call. The realization hit like a slap. My colleagues were still connected, hearing everything, maybe even watching through the tablet's camera. My stomach twisted, humiliation flooding me. Generals, analysts, people I'd spent years earning respect from were witnessing this, my lowest moment. Harold followed my gaze, a slow grin spreading across his face. "What's that? Your little friends spying on you?" He stepped toward the hall, the hammer still in hand, and I knew he'd destroy the tablet too, erase any chance of salvaging my dignity. I moved to block him, my body trembling, but he shoved me aside, my hip slamming into the workbench's edge, pain flaring sharp and hot. Mom finally moved, grabbing his arm, her voice shrill. "Harold, enough! You're ruining everything!" He shook her off her body, stumbling back, and I saw the fear in her eyes, not just for me, but for herself, for the life she'd built with him. Clara dropped her phone, rushing to Mom's side, and I was alone facing Harold as he marched toward my bedroom, his intent clear. My career, my family, my father's legacy. Everything was slipping through my fingers, and I felt like I was drowning, the weight of it all crushing me. The tablet's hum grew louder, a relentless reminder of the eyes on me, and I braced for the moment it all came crashing down. Harold's boots pounded down the hall, the hammer swinging in his grip. My tablet's hum pulling him like a beacon. I staggered after him, my hip throbbing the pain, a dull roar against the panic clawing my chest. The bedroom door was ajar, my desk lit by the tablet's glow, voices crackling through the speaker. My colleagues still on the call, their murmurs sharp and urgent. Major Carter's voice cut through Abigail. "Are you there?" "We heard everything." My knees buckled, the room tilting. They'd heard Harold's rants, my pleas, Clara's screams. My shame was laid bare, broadcast to the people I'd fought to impress. Harold burst into the room, his shadow swallowing the desk. "Look at this," he crowed, snatching the tablet, its screen flickering with the Pentagon seal. "Your big important meeting, huh?" He held it up, mocking his thumb, smearing the glass. I lunged forward, my voice raw. "Put it down, Harold. You've done enough." But he spun away, his laughter jagged, and raised the hammer, the metal glinting in the lamplight. My service medal pinned to my torn uniform slipped free, clattering to the floor, and I froze, the sound piercing me like a blade. It was Dad's medal, the one he'd given me now, lying in the dust discarded. Clara's voice came from behind, choked with sobs. "Don't, Harold, please." She'd followed us, Mom clinging to her arm. Both of them framed in the doorway, their faces pale. Mom's eyes were glassy, her mouth moving without sound like she was praying for this to end. But Harold was unstoppable, his voice booming over the tablet's static. "You want to be a hero? Abigail, let's show them who you really are." He tapped the screen, and my face appeared, the video feed flipping to my webcam, capturing my disheveled hair, my ripped uniform, my eyes wide with desperation. I gasped, my hands flying to cover my face, but it was too late. My colleagues saw me, broken, exposed, a spectacle in my own home. The tablet's speakers erupted, voices overlapping. "Abigail, what's happening? Is that your stepfather? Someone call security." Major Carter's tone was sharp, commanding, but it only fueled Harold's frenzy. He leaned into the camera, his grin feral. "She's a fraud, all of you. She's no officer. She's a liar living off her daddy's name." His words were a sledgehammer, shattering the last of my composure. I sank against the wall, my legs giving out the cold plaster, grounding me as my world crumbled. I saw Dad's medal on the floor, its ribbon tangled, and felt a void open inside me, swallowing every ounce of pride I'd clung to. Clara rushed to my side, kneeling, her hands gripping mine. "It's not true," she whispered, her voice fierce despite her tears. "You're amazing." But her words barely reached me, drowned by the chaos. Harold kept ranting, his voice a vicious chant. "She's nothing. Nothing." The tablet's feed flickered, my colleagues' faces frozen in shock, their silence louder than any judgment. I imagined their thoughts: pity, disgust, doubt, and the weight of it crushed me. 8 years of service, countless nights poring over intel, all reduced to this moment, my failure, on display for the world to see. Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "Harold, you're destroying us." "Stop." He whirled on her, the hammer raised, and for a split second, I thought he'd strike her. She flinched, and Clara gasped, her nails digging into my hand. But Harold just laughed, a sound so cruel it turned my stomach. "Destroying us. You let her do that, Diane, with her medals and her ego. I'm fixing it." He turned back to the tablet, his finger hovering over the power button, ready to end the call, to seal my humiliation in silence. I wanted to scream, to fight, but my body wouldn't move, my voice trapped in my throat. The room spun, the walls closing in, and I felt myself slipping, drowning in the wreckage of everything I was, with no way to pull myself back. I sat slumped against the bedroom wall, Clara's hand still gripping mine. Her warmth the only anchor in the storm. Harold stood over the desk, the tablet in one hand, the hammer in the other, his finger inches from shutting off the call, my colleagues' shocked faces frozen on the screen. My service medal lay in the dust by my feet, its ribbon a twisted reminder of everything I'd lost. Mom's plea hung in the air, unanswered, her silhouette trembling in the doorway. The room felt like it was suffocating me, but something shifted inside, a spark flickering in the dark. I wasn't done yet. I squeezed Clara's hand, my voice a whisper. "Stay here." She shook her head, her eyes wide, but I gave her a small nod, the kind Dad used to give me when I was scared. I pushed myself up, my legs shaky, the ache in my hip pulsing with every step. Harold didn't notice, too consumed by his victory, his back to me as he taunted the screen. I stepped forward, my boots scuffing the hardwood, and bent to pick up the medal. Its weight in my palm was steadying a piece of Dad's strength, and I pinned it back to my torn uniform, my fingers trembling, but sure. "Harold," I said, my voice low, cutting through the tablet's static. He turned, his grin faltering, the hammer still raised. "What now? You gonna cry some more?" I took a breath, my chest tight, but my resolve hardening. "No, I'm done crying. I'm done letting you rewrite who I am." His eyes narrowed, but I kept going, each word deliberate. "You don't get to decide my worth. Not you. Not anyone." Clara gasped softly, and I felt her strength behind me, her belief in me fueling my own. I stepped closer, my gaze locked on his, ignoring the hammer, the tablet, the chaos. "I'm going to the police, Harold. What you did, cuffing me, breaking my laptop, it's not just about me anymore. It's about Clara, about Mom, about this family you claim to protect." His face twitched, a flash of unease crossing it, but he covered it with a scoff. "Police? You think they'll care about your little tantrum? Go ahead, make a fool of yourself." But his voice wasn't as steady now, and I saw it, the crack in his armor, the fear he'd overplayed his hand. I turned to Mom, her hands still pressed to her mouth, her eyes glistening. "I'm sorry it's come to this," I said, my voice softening but firm. "But I can't let him hurt us anymore. You don't have to choose me, but I'm choosing myself." Her lips quivered, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her, a flicker of regret, maybe even courage. Clara stood, her arm brushing mine, her voice quiet but fierce. "I'm with you, Abigail." I froze, my throat tightening, her loyalty a lifeline I hadn't expected. Harold laughed, but it was forced hollow. "You're both delusional. You'll ruin everything, and for what?" I didn't answer, my focus shifting to the tablet. Major Carter's voice crackled through Abigail. "We're sending help. Stay safe." My heart leapt, a mix of relief and dread. Help was coming, but so was the fallout. I looked at Harold, his grip on the tablet tightening, and knew I had to act before he destroyed that too. I stepped toward the door, my boots steady now, my metal glinting faintly in the lamplight. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice clear, "and I'm taking Clara with me." He moved to block me, his bulk filling the doorway, but I didn't flinch. My hand rested on Clara's shoulder, guiding her behind me, her breath hitching, but her steps sure. Mom's voice broke Abigail, "Wait," but I couldn't stop, not now. The spark inside me was growing, a fire fed by years of proving myself, of carrying Dad's legacy, of refusing to let Harold win. I didn't know what the police would say or how the Pentagon would judge me, but I knew one thing: I was done being his victim. The hallway stretched before me, a path to something new, and I took the first step, Clara at my side. My heart pounding with a strength I'd almost forgotten I had. I guided Clara down the hall, my hand steady on her shoulder, her small frame trembling but resolute beside me. Harold's voice chased us, a low growl from the bedroom doorway. "You're making a mistake, Abigail. You'll regret this." I didn't look back, my boots clicking on the hardwood, each step a declaration. The living room was a blur, the couch still dented from where I'd sat cuffed and helpless just hours ago. My phone lay on the recliner, its screen dark now, Major Carter's calls unanswered. I grabbed it, slipping it into my pocket, the weight grounding me. Mom followed, her slippers scuffing, her voice cracking. "Abigail, please don't do this. We can fix it." I stopped at the front door, my hand on the knob, and turned to face her. Her eyes were red, her hair falling loose from its bun, and for a moment, I saw the woman who'd braided my hair before Dad's funeral, who'd promised we'd be okay. "Fix it," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Mom, you've been trying to fix him for years. I'm done waiting." "Clara's done waiting." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue, and that silence was louder than any apology. Clara tugged my sleeve, her eyes darting to the hall where Harold's footsteps echoed, growing closer. "We need to go," she whispered, and I nodded, opening the door. The night air hit me cool and sharp, smelling of rain and pine. Our neighbor's porch light flickered across the street, a small beacon in the dark. I took Clara's hand, leading her to my car parked at the curb, its faded blue paint glinting under the street lamp. My uniform was still torn, the metal pinned crookedly, but it felt right, like battle scars worn with pride. As we reached the car, Harold appeared in the doorway, his silhouette hulking, the hammer gone, but his fists clenched. "You walk out now, you're done with this family," he shouted, his voice carrying across the lawn. I paused, my key in the lock, and looked at him. Really looked. His face was flushed, his eyes desperate, a man clinging to control he'd already lost. "I'm not done with my family," I said, my voice steady, almost soft. "I'm saving it." Clara climbed into the passenger seat, her backpack clutched tight, and I slid behind the wheel, my hands steady, despite the adrenaline surging through me. I drove us to the police station, the town's lights blurring past, Clara silent beside me. My mind churned, replaying Harold's words, the tablet's feed, Mom's silence, but I pushed it down, focusing on the road. At a stoplight, Clara spoke, her voice small. "You're really doing this, aren't you?" I glanced at her, her braid loose, her eyes older than her 16 years. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "For you. For me. For Dad." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, and reached for my hand, her fingers cold but strong. The police station was quiet, its fluorescent lights harsh against the night. Inside, I asked for Detective Karen, a name I'd heard from a colleague who'd dealt with domestic issues. She met us in a small office, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes kind but sharp. I sat across from her, Clara beside me, and started talking, my voice calm but unyielding. I told her about the cuffs, the laptop, the tablet, Harold's rage, Clara's video. Karen listened, her pen moving steadily, her face unreadable but attentive. When I mentioned the Pentagon call, her eyebrow lifted, but she didn't interrupt, just nodded, letting me spill it all. Clara added details, her voice shaky but clear, describing Harold's threats the way he'd loomed over us. Karen's eyes softened, and she leaned forward, her voice low. "You're brave, both of you. This isn't easy, but you're doing the right thing." Her words landed like a balm, easing the raw edges of my fear. I glanced at Clara, her chin lifted, and felt a swell of pride, not just for myself, but for her, for the strength she'd found in this mess. As we finished, Karen handed me a card with her number, her handwriting neat and precise. "We'll need that video," she said, "and I'll coordinate with your military contacts." "This is serious, Abigail." I nodded, my fingers tracing the card's edge, the reality settling in. I'd crossed a line not just against Harold, but for myself, for the woman I'd always wanted to be. I stood, Clara rising with me, and we stepped back into the night, the station's door clicking shut behind us. I looked at her, our eyes meeting in the dim streetlight, and said nothing. The silence between us was enough heavy with the weight of what we'd done and the strength we'd found together. I stood outside the police station, the night air sharp against my skin, Clara's hand still in mine as we faced the empty street. The station's neon sign buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow on the asphalt, and my torn uniform felt like a second skin, heavy with the weight of what I'd just done. Detective Karen's card was tucked in my pocket. Her number, a lifeline I hadn't expected. Clara's backpack hung loose on her shoulder, her face pale but calm, like she'd aged a decade in hours. We didn't speak, just walked to my car, the silence between us thick, but not heavy, a shared understanding of the line we'd crossed. Back at the car, I checked my phone, its screen cracked from Harold's earlier rage. A voicemail from Major Carter waited, his voice clipped but steady. "Abigail, we've escalated this. Stay safe and call me tomorrow." I exhaled, a mix of relief and dread settling in. The Pentagon knew, and while that meant protection, it also meant scrutiny, my life under a microscope. I glanced at Clara, her eyes fixed on the dashboard, and wondered what she was thinking, if she regretted following me into this storm. We drove to Rebecca's apartment, my best friend from the unit who'd offered her spare room when I'd texted her earlier. The town was quiet, streetlights pooling yellow on the road, and I kept the radio off, letting the hum of the engine fill the space. Rebecca was waiting at her door, her hair pulled back, her eyes soft but searching as she hugged me tight. "You're okay," she whispered, and I nodded, though I wasn't sure it was true. Clara trailed behind, clutching her backpack, and Rebecca knelt, offering her a smile. "You're safe here, kid." Clara's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but enough to ease the knot in my chest. Inside Rebecca's living room was warm, cluttered with books, and a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. She made tea, the kettle's whistle cutting through the quiet, and we sat, the mug steaming between us. Clara sipped hers slowly, her hands steady now, and I watched her, marveling at her resilience. I wanted to ask how she was, but the words felt too big, too raw. Instead, I told Rebecca everything, my voice low, recounting the police report, Clara's video, the tablet's feed. She listened, her jaw tight, and when I finished, she leaned forward, her voice fierce. "You did the right thing, Abigail. He's done." Her words should have felt like victory, but they didn't. I saw Harold's face, his rage giving way to that flicker of fear, and wondered what he was doing now, if he was raging at Mom, or sitting alone, realizing he'd lost control. My phone buzzed again, a text from Mom, her words stark. "Why didn't you talk to me first? This hurts us all." I stared at the screen, my throat tight, the guilt sharp and unexpected. I'd wanted to protect her, to free her from Harold's grip, but her message felt like a door slamming shut. Her loyalty still tangled with him. Clara noticed her eyes flicking to my phone. "Is that Mom?" she asked, her voice small. I nodded, setting the phone face down, not ready to answer. "She's upset," I said, keeping it simple, but Clara's face hardened, a flash of anger I hadn't seen before. "She's always upset. She never picks us." The words hung there raw and true, and I reached for her hand, my fingers brushing hers. "I pick you," I said. My voice steady, and her eyes met mine, glistening but strong, a silent pact forming between us. Rebecca broke the silence, her voice practical. "You need rest, both of you. Tomorrow's gonna be heavy." I nodded, knowing she was right. The police would move fast with Clara's video, and the Pentagon's investigation loomed a shadow over my career. I led Clara to the guest room, its walls lined with Rebecca's old vinyl records, and tucked her into the narrow bed, her backpack at her feet. She grabbed my wrist as I turned to leave, her voice barely a whisper. "Thanks for getting me out." I swallowed hard, my heart full, and squeezed her hand. "Always," I said, and meant it. Alone in the living room, I sank onto the couch, the tea cold in my mug. My uniform was stiff, the metal's pin digging into my chest, and I unbuttoned the top, letting it hang open. The room was still Rebecca's puzzle pieces scattered like my thoughts, and I felt the weight of what I'd started. Harold's world was crumbling, but so was mine, and Mom's text burned in my mind, a reminder of the cost. I closed my eyes, the silence deafening my resolve solid, but my heart caught in the wreckage of a family I'd tried to save. Morning light slanted through Rebecca's blinds, painting stripes across the couch where I'd barely slept. My uniform was folded on a chair, its torn sleeve a quiet accusation. Clara was still asleep in the guest room, her soft snores drifting through the wall, and I envied her peace. My phone sat on the coffee table, Mom's text unanswered, its words looping in my head. I sipped lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, the bitterness matching the ache in my chest. Rebecca was at work, leaving the apartment still, the air heavy with what came next. A knock at the door jolted me sharp and insistent. I set the mug down, my pulse quickening, and opened it to find Mom standing there, her coat misbuttoned, her eyes puffy and avoiding mine. She held a plastic bag, the kind she used for leftovers, and thrust it toward me. "Clara's sketchbooks," she said, her voice flat. "I thought she'd want them." I took the bag, its weight surprisingly light, and stepped aside, expecting her to come in. She didn't. I waited, the silence stretching, my fingers tightening on the bag's handles. Mom stared at the floor, her hands stuffed in her pockets, and I saw the lines around her mouth deeper than I remembered. "You didn't call," I said, finally, my voice low, not accusing, but searching. Her shoulders twitched a small flinch, but she didn't look up. "I didn't know what to say, Abigail. You went to the police. You took Clara. It's all falling apart." Her words were soft, but they landed hard, each one a stone dropped into the space between us. I swallowed, my throat dry. I had to, Mom. He hurt us. He wasn't going to stop. She nodded barely, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I know," she whispered, but it didn't sound like agreement, more like surrender. I wanted to reach for her to bridge the gap, but my hands stayed at my sides, the bag crinkling in my grip. She glanced at the hall like she was checking for Clara, then back at the floor. "They arrested him this morning," she said, her voice almost too quiet to hear. "He's gone." The words should have brought relief, but they didn't. I pictured Harold in a cell, his bravado stripped away, his rage turned to silence, and felt only a hollow ache. I saw our house, its rooms empty without his booming voice, and wondered what Mom would do now, alone with the ghosts of her choices. "Did you see it happen?" I asked, needing anything to understand her. She shook her head, her fingers twisting the edge of her coat. I couldn't watch. "I just signed the papers and left." Her voice broke, and I realized she wasn't just grieving him, she was grieving us, the family we'd been before I'd drawn this line. Clara's footsteps came from the hall, soft but steady, and I turned to see her in the doorway, her hair messy, her eyes narrowing at Mom. "You're here," she said. Not a question, her tone sharp with something I couldn't name. Mom's face crumpled, and she reached out, but Clara stepped back, her arms crossing. "I'm staying with Abigail," she said, her voice firm, and I felt a pang, pride mixed with sorrow. Mom's hand dropped, her eyes glistening, and she nodded like she'd expected it, but hoped she was wrong. I set the bag of sketchbooks on the floor, its contents a small piece of Clara's world, and looked at Mom, searching for the woman who'd once fought for me. She was there somewhere, but buried under years of compromise. "I'll call you later," I said, my voice steady but distant. A promise I wasn't sure I'd keep. She nodded again, her eyes flicking to mine for the first time, and I saw it, a flicker of regret, raw and unguarded, before she turned and walked away, her coat flapping in the morning breeze. Clara moved to my side, her shoulder brushing mine, and we stood there watching Mom's car pull away, its taillights fading into the gray dawn. The apartment was quiet again, the coffee mug cold on the table, and I felt the weight of what I'd set in motion. Harold was gone, but the cost was etched in Mom's hunched shoulders, in Clara's guarded stance, in the space where our family used to be. I closed the door, my hand lingering on the knob, and let the silence settle heavy and final. A chapter closed with no words left to say. I sat on a bench in the park near Rebecca's apartment, the late afternoon sun warm on my face, the grass patchy but soft under my sneakers. Clara was at school her first day back since everything, and I'd taken the afternoon off, my first break in weeks. My civilian clothes, a faded sweater and jeans, felt foreign after months in uniform, but they fit the quiet I craved. The park was alive with small sounds, a kid's laugh, a dog's bark, the rustle of leaves skittering across the path. I held a paper coffee cup, its warmth seeping into my palms, and let my mind wander, something I hadn't done in too long. Mom had called that morning, her voice hesitant but clear, asking to meet here, just the two of us. I'd agreed, though, my stomach knotted at the thought. Since she'd dropped off Clara's sketchbooks, we'd barely spoken, our texts short and careful, like strangers learning each other's language. I sipped the coffee, its bitter edge grounding me, and watched a squirrel dart up an oak tree, its movements quick but sure. I envied that certainty, the instinct to keep going, no matter what. She arrived a few minutes later, her scarf loose around her neck, her steps slow as she crossed the grass. She sat beside me, leaving a small space between us, and folded her hands in her lap, her nails bitten down, a habit I hadn't noticed before. Neither of us spoke at first, the silence not heavy but full, like we were both testing its weight. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice low, almost lost in the breeze. "Not just for what happened, but for all of it. For not seeing you." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the weariness in her eyes, the kind that comes from carrying mistakes too long. I wanted to be angry, to list every moment she'd chosen Harold over us, but the fire wasn't there anymore. Instead, I felt a quiet ache, not for what we'd lost, but for what we might still find. "I know," I said, my voice soft but steady. "It's not easy, Mom, but I'm here." Her eyes glistened, and she knotted her fingers, twisting the scarf's fringe. A small gesture that felt like a start. We talked, then really talked, for the first time in years. She told me about her fear, how Harold's temper had grown slowly, like a shadow she didn't notice until it was too dark. She spoke of Dad not with the old grief, but with a quiet pride, saying he'd have loved seeing me in my uniform. I listened, my coffee cooling, and shared pieces of my own truth, how I doubted myself, how Clara's courage had pulled me through. The words came easily, not forced like a river, finding its course after a long drought. A jogger passed, her ponytail swinging, and I thought of Clara, how she'd started sketching again, her latest piece, a swirl of blues and greens like the sea after a storm. Mom smiled when I mentioned it, a real smile, and said she'd seen Clara's work at a school exhibit, how it had made her cry. I nodded, my throat tight, and realized we were rebuilding not the family we'd been, but something new, fragile, but honest. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in soft pinks, and I felt a stillness settle inside me, a peace I hadn't known I was chasing. Mom reached for my hand, her fingers cold but firm, and I let her, the contact small but heavy with meaning. We didn't need to say more, not yet. The park hummed around us, alive and indifferent, and I breathed deep, the air clean, my heart steady, ready for whatever came next. The park's light faded the sky now, a deep lavender, the air cooling against my skin. Mom's hand rested in mine, her touch tentative but real, and I didn't pull away. A breeze stirred, lifting a stray leaf from the bench, and I watched it drift to the ground, its edges curled from a long season. My coffee cup sat empty beside me, its rim stained, a small marker of the hours we'd spent here unraveling years of silence. I felt no need to fill the quiet now, no urge to fix what wasn't ready to be fixed. I thought of Clara, probably home from school by now, sketching at Rebecca's kitchen table, her pencils scattered like confetti. She'd texted me earlier a photo of her latest drawing, a single tree under a wide sky, its branches strong but bare. "It's you," she'd written, and I'd smiled, my chest warm with her faith in me. I hadn't replied yet, wanting to hold that image a little longer, to carry it like a talisman. Mom shifted beside me, her scarf slipping, and I saw her glance at the horizon, her face softer than I'd seen in years. I stood, stretching my legs, the bench creaking under me. "Let's walk," I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. She nodded, rising slowly, and we moved down the path, our steps unhurried, the gravel crunching softly. The park was emptying out, families heading home, their voices fading into the dusk. I noticed a small pond ahead, its surface still reflecting the last streaks of light. We stopped there, standing side by side, and I let my eyes trace the water's edge, the way it held everything without judgment. "I've been thinking about Dad," I said, not planning the words, just letting them come. Not the hero, but the man. How he'd sit with me after a bad day, not saying much, just there. Mom's breath hitched, and I kept going, my voice steady. "I used to think I had to be him to prove something, but I don't. I just have to be me." She turned to me, her eyes searching, and for the first time I saw her see me not as a shadow of him, but as her daughter, whole and enough. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small silver locket, its chain worn but shining. "It was Dad's," she said, her voice barely above the water's ripple. "He gave it to me before you were born. I thought you should have it now." I took it, my fingers brushing the cool metal, and opened it to find a tiny photo of us, Dad, Mom, and me, laughing in a park, not unlike this one. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Just closed the locket and slipped it into my pocket. Its weight, a quiet promise. We started walking again, the path looping back toward the bench, and I felt lighter, like I'd shed a skin I hadn't known I was wearing. Mom talked about her plans, small things, a new job at the library, a painting class she'd signed up for, and I listened, not needing her to be perfect, just present. The stars were out now, faint but steady, and I thought of Clara's tree, its branches reaching despite the cold. I was that tree I realized, not unbreakable, but enduring, rooted in something deeper than pain. We reached the bench, and I stopped, turning to face her. "I'll see you soon," I said, my voice soft, but certain. She nodded, her eyes bright, and hugged me, her arms stronger than I expected. I hugged her back, the locket pressing against my hip, and let the moment linger. As she walked away, her scarf trailing, I sat back down, the bench cool under me, and looked at the sky, its vastness, a quiet gift. I breathed slow, my heart calm, the world around me still holding me in its gentle, unspoken embrace. I woke to the soft clatter of dishes in our new kitchen, the morning light spilling through a window that overlooked a small yard. Clara was at the counter pouring cereal, her hair tied back with a scrunchie, her sketchbook open beside her bowl. We'd moved into this apartment a month ago, just the two of us and Mom, a place with creaky floors and walls that needed paint but felt like ours. My uniform hung in the closet, pressed and ready for tomorrow's briefing. But today, I wore a loose t-shirt, the kind I'd never had time for before. The air smelled of coffee and toast, simple things that grounded me in this new rhythm. I joined Clara at the table, my mug steaming, and watched her sketch, her pencil moving in quick, sure strokes, shaping a bird with outstretched wings. "Looks free," I said, my voice soft, and she smiled, her eyes bright. "It's for you," she said, and my chest warmed, a quiet pride in how she'd grown, how we both had. Mom was at her library job, her first steady work in years, and I pictured her shelving books, her hands steady, finding her own kind of peace. We were stitching ourselves back together, not perfect, but real. After breakfast, I walked to the corner bookstore, a habit I'd picked up since moving here. The bell above the door jingled, and the owner, a woman with silver streaks in her hair, nodded at me, already knowing my order, a mystery novel or something with poems, anything to quiet my mind. I browsed the shelves, my fingers trailing over worn spines, and picked a slim volume of essays, their pages yellowed but inviting. Outside, I sat on a bench by the street, the book open in my lap, and read about resilience, about people who'd rebuilt from ashes. Their stories felt like mirrors, reflecting my own slow climb. Back home, I found Clara on the couch, her sketchbook closed, her phone buzzing with a message from a friend. She was laughing, a sound I hadn't heard enough, and I realized how much I'd missed it, how much I'd missed her lightness. I sat beside her, not speaking, just listening to the hum of our little world, the fridge's low drone, the neighbor's dog barking, the distant hum of traffic. My hand rested on the locket in my pocket, its silver cool against my fingers, and I thought of Dad not as a hero, but as a man who'd loved us, who'd want me to keep going. I'd started journaling lately, late at night, when the apartment was still, my pen, scratching out thoughts I couldn't say aloud. I wrote about fear, about strength, about the way pain carves out space for something new. Last night, I'd written about forgiveness, not for Harold, but for Mom, for myself, for the girl who'd thought she had to carry everything alone. It wasn't easy, but it was honest, and that was enough. I looked at Clara, her laughter fading into a soft smile, and felt a stillness settle like a long exhale after holding my breath too long. The day stretched on, simple and unhurried. I cooked dinner, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, and Clara set the table, her chatter filling the room. Mom came home, her scarf draped over her shoulder, and we ate together, our voices overlapping, our laughter tentative but growing. The table was small, the chairs mismatched, but it was ours, a space we'd claimed. As I cleared the plates, the sink's water warm against my hands, I felt the weight of the past loosen, not gone, but lighter, like a shadow thinning in the midday sun. I dried my hands, my eyes catching the bird sketch on the counter, and breathed slow, the world steady around me, ready for whatever I'd write next. The next morning, I stood in our apartment's tiny balcony, a chipped mug of tea in my hands, the city waking below in a hum of car horns and distant voices. Clara was still asleep, her sketchbook left open on the couch. The bird's wings now shaded in soft grays, as if ready to soar. Mom had left early for her painting class, a new spark in her step I hadn't seen since I was a kid. I leaned against the railing, the metal cool under my elbows, and watched a flock of sparrows dart across the sky, their freedom a quiet mirror to the space I'd carved inside myself. I'd been invited to a military ceremony next week, a commendation for leadership, a nod to the resilience I'd shown through the chaos. The thought of standing there, my uniform crisp, Clara and Mom in the crowd, stirred a pride that felt different now, less about proving, more about being. I'd spent so long chasing Dad's shadow, thinking strength meant never bending, but I saw it clearer now. Strength was in the breaking, in the choice to stand again, to choose myself, even when it hurt. I thought about Harold, not with anger, but with a strange clarity. He'd tried to dim my light, but in doing so, he'd shown me how bright it could burn. I didn't forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever, but I'd let go of the weight his words had held. They weren't mine to carry. I sipped my tea, the steam curling in the cool air, and felt a truth settle deep. Life isn't about escaping pain, but about what you build from it. I'd built a home, not just these walls, but in the trust between me and Clara, in the fragile bridge I was mending with Mom and the woman I was becoming. Yesterday, I'd walked by a community garden near the bookstore, its plots bursting with late summer flowers tended by strangers who'd turned barren soil into something alive. I'd stopped, struck by the patience it took, the faith in small acts. That was my lesson, I realized, not in grand victories, but in the quiet work of growing, of showing up for myself and those I loved, day after day. I didn't need to be a hero, just Abigail, flawed and steady, learning to love the life I was shaping. I went inside, setting my mug on the counter, and picked up Clara's sketchbook, tracing the bird's wings with my finger. I'd frame it, I decided, hang it where I could see it every day, a reminder of her belief in me, of my own. The apartment was quiet, the morning light soft through the windows, and I felt a peace that wasn't perfect, but was mine. I'd been through fire, and I'd come out not unbroken, but whole, my roots deeper for it. What's a moment that taught you to keep growing, even when it hurt? I'd love to hear your story in the comments, to know what keeps you moving forward. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it. Means more than you know to connect like this. Thank you for listening, for being here. Here's to healing, to growing, to finding our way, one step at a time.